let this message clearly be communicated. We live in a false, inverted reality, a subject that will continue to get more attention on this show, where up is down, down is up, right is wrong, wrong is right, war is peace, slavery is freedom, and on down the line you can even find a clue from Alice in Wonderland. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense, nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrary-wise, what it is, it wouldn't be. And what it would be, it would, you see. There's no stopping this crazy train making up today's collective consciousness that is measured with how we treat each other and what we allow into our lives. The history of the troubles of this region is significant when viewed from a perspective looking at the region's continuous issues with white slavery and other forms of institutionalized slavery and control. The truth remains in all cases, those that forget history are doomed to repeat it. Now, there's a couple articles that you're going to see that reflect some things that have been happening here in Portland. Tonight, we're addressing the truth of what really went down in this dark town of the late 19th century. Not to demonize, attack, or condemn, but to educate. And people ask me often as I present this information about my hometown, why Portland? Why are you bringing up Portland? Portland is a microcosm for a larger world or universe. It's a great place to investigate the realities of a forgotten and often denied past, especially when the public image of Portland is another image of Portland entirely. Now, this is the mayor, okay, and this is Novak. I've met people that don't know that these people are the people in charge of the government in Portland. These people, we should know who they are. And there's a lot of people that have moved here in recent years that aren't aware of things that are going on locally because they've come from places that are already going bankrupt, and they've been told that Portland is the #1 place to live right now. And so there's a lot of illusions about Portland's livability right now, and there's a lot of things taking place right now for the few to make money off of the many.
$225 million worth of bonds in August 2014 for sewer system capital improvements. $31 million August 2014 for cash flow borrowing. $110 million in bonds for water system capital improvements. You're looking at more than $250 million, $250 million rather, here in just in August alone, in fall, of debt by issuing bonds. And what's going on here? So they want to extract money for sewer, and here we've got all these bonds going out. They're borrowing all this money. City, I've lived in the city most of my life. Every time there's a wave of crime in California, or earthquakes, like an AIDS crisis, there's a wave that comes to Oregon and in Portland area. So when they had the AIDS epidemic in '86, massive influx into the city of people showing up from California. Then the Northridge earthquake happened in the late '80s or whatever. They rush up here.
Homelessness is being criminalized in so many ways. In some areas in America, you can't feed the homeless. So there's a connection between drug addiction and mental illness and other issues that relate to isolation. When some people have no family, when they have no income, when they have no belongings, when they feel hated by society, when there's nowhere for them to go and do anything productive, it can cause serious problems with someone that at that moment in time, isn't strong enough to power themselves forward, regardless of how society treats them. We're showing some of the stresses that people are under in the Portland area. For some of you that don't go outside very often or just watch things through the lens of the local news, we'll play this with audio.
You're goddamn murderers. You're goddamn murderers. You're goddamn murderers. You're goddamn murderers. You're evil. You're greedy, you're bloodthirsty, and you're cold-blooded goddamn killers, every goddamn one of them. You are goddamn murderers, every goddamn one of them.
This is a man that I talked to in Laurelhurst Park a couple months ago. And we'll just play a couple minutes of this.
I'm just saying, there's no privacy, so go ahead and turn on the lens, let it all be, but, you know.
Tell me first, your home was devalued.
Devalued.
Prior to 2005, artificially.
Correct. That's correct. And
because I don't fully understand the cycle. I know this is a sensitive issue. I thought I would record this part, and now we're seeing some people having difficulty affording the property taxes because the property's been quickly.
It's never ever any delinquency on the property taxes. They said we built an oversized 2-car garage without their permission. And we did not. That was built in 1908, the same year the house was built.
Now we're talking about the city of Portland?
The county of Multnomah.
And some of the stuff is totally new to me, like putting trim up in the corners. Now, James, if you can go back to the images, to the slideshow, there's a note there that you'll see that somebody wrote and left on my car. Look for that. We're going to show that. So there's also a reality TV component of this, kind of like Survivor Man, and it's been coexistence in the neighborhood. Someone left this on my car. Please try to move to a different area. People are growing concerned. Thank you for understanding. You can see the passive-aggressive nature in it. I don't really care about you, but I'm going to say something to hurt your feelings. And I've already expressed on this show in previous episodes, that it's been difficult to be in the home-free existence in Portland because there's a lot of people that don't want homeless people around their neighborhood. And there's also a high-profile story in the news, whether you've heard about this or not, with a man that was trying to coax children into his homeless vehicle off of 67th. Now, I really am really bothered by stories like that because people see that and they see a homeless person, especially someone they don't know, and some people make assumptions. First, they start with some sort of pushing on the chest, and then they employ some other tactics, pain compliance tactics. Pain compliance tactics. Some people that watch this video that have actually worked in corrections have commented and said that that type of a hold, that type of a pinch that you're about to see is the type of pinch that can cause permanent nerve damage. Let's skip ahead maybe 30 seconds. We want to get to where they're using the pain compliance. Did we all see that? Okay, I hope that was clear. That's what the powerful business interests want done in Portland. There's no place for the homeless to go. There isn't a safe place for the homeless to be. Portland traditionally has kept the social services downtown where the drugs are. This goes back historically. We have this report here that deals with the professional cuddling operation. I said years ago in the New World Order we would see cuddle houses, where people that are so lonely have to go and actually pay to have a hug. Oh, so we have these, cuddle houses in operation, and here we are in the year 2014. We have this report from ABC News, what it's like to be a professional cuddler. Good morning, America. Portland, Oregon, back on the map again. So when we're not on the map when it comes to pedophilia, when the friend of the mayor and the former mayor is caught having sex with a little boy. Oh, Portland's national news again. But hey, we get to be national news again when it comes to the fact that men in Portland, because things are so effed up here locally, the imbalance between men and women is so extreme. This is one of the most unromantic times in all of Portland history. Oh yes, that's the progressive Portland. She's like, look at me, give me a little bit of attention. There's a guy with the camera. So there's the real Portlandia. And so obviously there's a struggle taking place going forward a little bit further. You're gonna see a bag put on this individual's head. And
yeah, I got some of it, yeah.
This is official Portland police policy. When a suspect or someone that's being detained allegedly spits at the officers. But one might wonder, did they actually spit at the officers, or are they just being accused of spitting at the officers so they can put a bag on their head?
I'm actually going to fall into a trap that something serious is going to happen to me, and I'm going to have to trigger the succession clause of the Constitution, who becomes the governor in a time of emergency, and it's an interesting exercise. I've been told the only thing I have to worry about is when they start putting the gloves on. And those plastic latex things.
It sounds like a good time to go back to some of that stock footage of the Portland zombie dance. But, play a little electronica music, just have a little, sound effect of Kulongoski saying succession of government.
The succession clause of the Constitution, who becomes the governor in a time of emergency, and it's an interesting exercise.
Having people twerking and have sounds of helicopters flying over, and maybe people twerking with the helicopter itself. This is outside the Nordstrom in downtown Portland. You know the propaganda is working when people will dress up like a zombie. Just a few things about Halloween. Where are people dressing like an angel or something angelic? You see all this focus, for the most part with Halloween, on demons, werewolves, vampires. And what's really happening is humanity, for that day, they can go ahead and say, this is who I really am. This is my spirit self. This is my spirit animal. I'm a vampire. I'm a bloodsucker. And when you look at how society is functioning today, you see how it's a metaphor for other things. People vampiring on each other, sucking off of one another, and basically being an intellectual zombie, being apathetic about the issues that affect us all, and voting in a collectivized mindset. Ooh, Barack Obama, 2008, 75,000 Portlanders, Waterfront Park. This is the recent zombie apocalypse. This is from a few years ago. Zombie dance in Portland, Oregon. So more and more people know about the potential for the solar flare kill shot and how vulnerable the grid is, not only here in the United States, but elsewhere in the world. But the thing of the matter is, there has been no real money allocated to reinforce the grid. And nuclear power plants in the U.S. only have enough fuel for about a week. What does that mean? It's a disaster waiting to happen. We'll go into the article here. A couple researchers at the University of Cornell have determined that survivors of a zombie apocalypse should head west. And no, they're not talking about Portland, Oregon, the most gentrified city in all America, both the have and have-nots moving here as fast as they can. No. We're talking about the American West. We're talking about the Rocky Mountains. We're talking about the Mountain Time Zone. We're talking about anywhere but a dense population center. If a zombie outbreak were to strike in the United States, those trying to survive should head west, according to a new report. The recommendations come from researchers at Cornell University. And it goes on, and you can read more about this over at AMTV. So there's information out there, and I think people are tapped into a certain degree psychically, although people pretend they don't know what's going on. But I have a feeling that a large chunk of our society is aware that something's coming. The problem is, with TV shows and propaganda and predictive programming, people have become desensitized. And so it's almost as if some people want to see a zombie apocalypse, like it's funny, cute, something to write about in a comic book. We need to be listening to our higher selves and consciousness and understand that it almost seems as if people are being hypnotized by all this entertainment, all the rock music, all the stuff in pop culture. Just keep looking at the latest fad of the day. And in reality, we're just that much more closer, one day closer to this potential event that as a child I used to have dreams about. Former CIA contractor says we created ISIS. And there are so many former government officials as well as current government officials that are sharing this perspective with the world. And so it's really on the part of the independent thinking individual to go, hey, this is propaganda. This is a lie. They're obviously trying to invoke us into some sort of racist paradigm, into believing that we are being invaded by brown people and that we must prepare. The videos on YouTube are already going up, getting prepared for the ISIS terror attacks on the United States. And this is actually how, instead of censoring the web, instead of locking up truthers or freedom seekers or activists and putting them into a FEMA camp, you don't need to do all that. You need to pollute the mainstream media and aspects of the alternative media with propaganda so far on the other side of the moon that it creates some sort of a distortion effect. And this one's fairly interesting. Pentagon plans to host international robot competition. If we were to talk about robots and technology, if I were to keep you informed of the latest developments relating to what is happening with robotics today, it would be a daily 1-hour show. the world's super state nations are unified. They're together on the whole Islamic threat. Oh my God, ISIS is in the sewer. ISIS is in the sewer, and they're recruiting rats to commit terror attacks against the United States. But meanwhile, Kim Jong-un tells North Korean army to prepare for war with the United States. Obama extends sanctions on Russia, citing national security. Again, more kamikaze. Yeah, let's put sanctions on Russia. That makes lots of sense. Yeah, that's brilliant. This is really going to lead to a kumbaya, my lord. The New Age Assumption rapture is here. Oh, the Pleiadians are going to clean it up. Oh, the aliens are going to fix things. Oh, Putin and Obama are going to dance. They're going to do a little bumping and grinding. We got a little twerking up in here. Going to the next one. So we have seen the rise of BRICS. So for those of you that have watched my show for years, you've seen me talk about this relationship with China and the United States. And in this economic decline that we're seeing, regardless of the fact that you may be working or some people may still have a home, the economy in the United States is not in a good position. And so we're seeing a lot of foreign investment in the United States. China has actually propped up the housing market in California. And there's more and more large chunks of land that are being sold to China by the day. And this is all leading to something, and you're going to see it in your lifetime. Now, I've warned you, and I've told you, that as we see the relationship between Portland and China grow, they're going to play a larger role in things here in the Pacific Northwest. Well, in video number 2, I've never seen the mayor of Portland so excited. Guess who the new investors are in Portland, Oregon at the South Waterfront?
Is in the works along the South Waterfront. What's driving all the investment there? Ken Body is live at the site of the new Hyatt House Hotel. Ken.
Well, this hotel development behind me is just one of several projects going up in and around Portland's waterfront. And in this case, it's an indication that foreign investors are willing to put millions into the Rose City. Here's what it will look like. A 200-room, $53 million Hyatt House Extended Stay Hotel in Portland's River Place district, right next to South Waterfront. Mayor Hales was among those breaking ground.
If it's going to be a complete neighborhood, we need housing, we need commerce, we need hotels, which is what we're getting more of with this project, and soon we'll need a grocery store because it's becoming a neighborhood.
The Hyatt is mostly financed by investors from China. Under a federal initiative called EB-5, foreign nationals can get green cards for them and their families if they invest at least $500,000 in a targeted area and are vetted through U.S. immigration.
And you might remember a couple years ago, a woman in Vancouver, Washington actually sprayed herself in the face with acid and said a black man did it. And it came out that she made it up. So what's going on in the minds of today's younger women that I've never seen women under 30 show awareness of any larger picture. It's always been Democrat, Republican in the box, or just libertarian. It's a groupthink collective. It's system oriented and based. For the most part, doesn't mean there aren't anarchists, but as far as like a good combination of political knowledge, spiritual understanding, not just using your physical beauty to attain things, but actually having character. In today's society, I'm not so sure about the past. But I know that we're being really blunted and our growth. You know, we don't have a normal rite of passage as a young man and woman. So there's a lot of effed up men and women out there, and a lot of women and men out there have issues with men and women and don't realize that the majority of men and women are effed up. And there's plenty of good men and women out there that are having trouble meeting other good men and women because there's an overabundance of manipulators that are both male and female around us. It's not just one sex, folks. It's that aspect of humanity that's in that sociopathic, non-empathetic, vibrational state of being. Raining fire, airstrikes rock ISIS positions in Iraq and Syria. It's pretty violent footage. We're just going to play the first 30 seconds. But people were horrified when this was happening when Bush did it. And here we are all these years later, and the same thing is taking place. All right, that's all we're going to show. But this is a lot like what we saw when Iraq was invaded. Now it's happening all over again. But the perception of the threat is real for a lot of people. They don't see this as fake. People have bought what they've been told about ISIS, no matter how many of the beheading videos have been believed or said to be fake by analysts across the world. I know people are tuning in at different parts of the hour, different parts of the show. And I want to make sure that there is relevant information in the show for people that are tuning in at all different parts of the hour. And so it's important that people understand also in this world that there's a lot of propaganda out there in the mainstream media, and I've talked about this before in other shows, that's directly designed to put us into a state of hypnosis, you know, to get us to be subservient to the state, to get us to have some form of sympathy for the military-industrial complex, and to steer us away from sympathy for the victims of war in, say, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and perhaps future victims of war in Iran, if Iran is ever attacked by the United States. So it's important that we understand that it is not healthy to let this box program you, especially to let your channel sit dormant on CNN or Fox News. I mean, at least you're watching Access Now. That's great. But overall, watching massive amounts of TV, especially when it's propaganda, it doesn't necessarily have a positive impact on the brain. Video here. Katy Perry, they're affecting the human sex drive, but they're hyping up the Earth female preteen sex drive. And this relates to having sex with extraterrestrials or the Nephilim. This is actually a serenade to the fallen gods. Now we're going to pan down the audio in about 10 seconds, and we're going to follow along with the lyrics. Pan down audio. Fill me with your love. Fill me with your poison. Take me. Tut-tut-tut-tut. Take me. Want to be a victim. Ready for abduction. Boy, you're an alien. Hey, I got some news for those of you out there. This isn't about mixed race relationships. This isn't about just the white girl and the black guy, regardless of the video that you saw. This is about extraterrestrials, whether you believe in them or not. And if there's some sort of sickness within our media that's trying to molest the minds of young girls and steer them away from good men, away from men that are actually trying to stop the evil of this world, and they're actually trying to steer them into the arms of those that are evil and play on their physical bodies. And I do think, by the way, that there is a creator, but I think there's something about our bodies. The bodies of the modern earth man and earth woman, they've tampered with us and they've tampered with our sex drives. And for the most part, women today are procreating with the dominator male. And the non-dominator male is not continuing his genes, or you can even say his energy field. It's a world of dominators and those that love them.
Fell in love with an admitted terrorist and then agreed to fly overseas to Turkey to fight with ISIS in Syria.
Okay, so this stuff's getting really ridiculous.
Against the US.
And the more ridiculous the story, I guess for some people, the more believable it is, because people are being conditioned to believe the absurd. Whether we're looking at the official story of 9/11, the official story of the Christmas tree bomber here in Portland, you know, the official story is some lone nut tried to commit a terror attack in Portland when in reality it was an FBI operation the entire time. It's overwhelming how much corruption there is on the local level and how much was involved there with the FBI in that case, just simply to get us in the JTTF. Today, where do you think things will be in 5 or 10 years? We don't trust each other now. Have you walked the streets of Portland? Have you walked the streets of Portland in my shoes? That's a pretty important question. Because if you haven't, and you're only looking at it from your own tribalist perspective, as some do, then some people aren't seeing what's coming. They're not seeing their tribalism. They're not seeing the racism. They're not seeing the hatred and distrust in the streets. But I'll tell you what, boys and girls, men and women of the audience, it is very, very real. And so some people say, hey, let's just talk about solutions. Well, you can go ahead and talk about things that make you feel fuzzy, you know, and there's rabbits to pet, and there's cool things to do, there's rides, there's the Rose Festival, but it's not really solution oriented just to fulfill your body with the spirit of oblivion, to just get high off of having fun. There's work to be done. So in the solution process that some people say they're looking for, there has to be some sort of accountability with whether or not someone's being honest with themselves about reality, about themselves. So if someone's actually supporting dominators, if someone's actually putting their money, maybe a lot of it, in the direction of a global New World Order corporation, then they're not ready for solutions because they still haven't addressed the solution of stop feeding the beast. So as you watch this next video, think not about what your country can do for you. Instead, think about what you can do for your country. Something like that. Don't think and pray for others to wake up as you watch this video and you start getting goosebumps and you start dancing and you start doing the woo 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 woo. No, I want you to imagine yourself getting off the couch. I want you to imagine no longer just being a consumer of media, but maybe creating media or supporting others that are creating media. I want you to visualize yourself becoming more human than what you actually are, and grounding, shedding out, and letting go of whatever robotic, apathetic attributes you may have developed, either because of the culture we live in or the actual very effects of living in Portland, Oregon. We're actually going to end the show now as I've lost my voice. I'm Alex Ansary reminding you, and we'll go to the video, the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies in one place, within. Good night, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Complete protection. There may be rain, but never a storm. Imagine that. Can you imagine that? Imagine that. We live in a world with no more hungry mouths to feed. There's no reason to fight. Yeah, 'cause we are all right. And
okay. Yeah, well now I can't wait for an explanation so that a lay person can understand about you. Alex.
Well, thank you, Richard, for inviting me onto the show, and thank you, Jim.
All right. Welcome, Alex. It's not like you're new to this, right?
I've been around here about 10 years now.
Been that long already?
Yep.
Oh my God.
In this very room.
But you were gone for a couple of years.
A couple of years. Went to Dallas, Texas in 2011 after doing the show for about 6 years. And then I went off the grid in the middle of nowhere in South Colorado. So I always kind of want to explore that area. Then came back here around March last year. It's been about a year since I've been back in Portland.
What brought you back?
This place.
PCM?
Mostly this place, yeah. It's actually quite difficult when you travel throughout America today to find really good production facilities. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people like Bill, other volunteers, people that actually care about alternative media. And, you know, I've been doing this on a shoestring budget, we'll just say that, all this time. And when you can go somewhere, and it doesn't matter how rich you are, poor you are, to just be able to produce something and share it with your community and also share it on YouTube, we have a lot more tools today than we did definitely 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Or last year, actually.
Right.
So what's the situation in like Austin? I think Austin had really good cable access facilities, really? But
yeah,
still don't match up what we have then.
And I was in Dallas, and I was working at a video production company for about a year, but I don't believe that they had an access TV facility. I was trying to find one while I was there.
I know Austin did. I don't know. I don't think Dallas does.
In Austin, I think that's where it started in the mid-'70s. And then it kind of grew from there. And I think they had a change in ownership. There's been some changes I've heard. I haven't really been studying what's going on with all the specific access channels, but I know Seattle's gone through a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Portland is really just rare.
Right. Access means your show is going to be on television that the whole city can see.
Right, and I remember there were some articles that came out in 2010 or 11 that were talking about the financial problems at that time. Now, at that time, we're only a couple years after the banker bailout thing started. So I was really concerned at that point whether Access TV would be here at that time. Really? Looking back at some of my other shows, you know, some of the commentary was, we don't know how long we're going to be here based on the information we had then.
Right.
Here we are in 2015. It's almost a miracle. And now we have a green screen, and everything is digital, and even all these lights that we're using are new.
The lights, right.
Well,
So,
no,
yeah.
these days we could set this up this way, and you could put a camera up there with these new cameras, these HD cameras, and you could be going directly up on YouTube right now.
Right.
We could do it there. I mean, you probably have done that when you were on the trip.
I should be doing it more. There's definitely more requests for live shows. Definitely, because on the internet now we have live stream, you have Ustream, and you have Google Hangouts and the YouTube Live option, and many others. So it's so much cheaper than it used to be.
I know a guy that used to, Joe Anybody, in fact, he's been downtown, he'll have one camera and another camera, and with one of them, shooting the same footage, he's uploading it directly.
Well, the other
I don't
thing
know
is
how the hell he did that.
a lot of these cameras have gotten cheaper. This is an example of an HD flip camera. And whether someone wants to film police or interview someone, it has pretty decent resolution. You can find these on eBay for about $40. So the cost of these semi-disposable cameras have really come down in recent years.
Well, it's custom made for citizen journalists who want to get the word out, and like websites like Portland Indie Media, that's what that whole thing was. Came out of the WTO up in Seattle when everything was going on in the streets. If they'd have had the technology that we have now, might have been a whole different thing happening up there.
Right.
You know, and now we have it, and people aren't taking advantage of it. They post the stuff to Facebook or to places where they're in competition with people posting pictures of their cake or their dinner.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that, it's fine, but there's not any depth to it. And the stuff that you do, whether you agree or disagree, there's a lot of depth to it.
People should upload to YouTube when they're filming certain things, because I've seen certain protests in Portland, and I want to get an idea of everything that happened with the riot cops. And there will be like a core 4 people that are actually uploading, but when you see the video, you see crowds of people with their cameras out. And I think some of those people are just filming for their personal. I feel like they should be uploading what's actually happening, so we have as many angles as possible, because police need to be held accountable when they do certain things, or when they say, oh, it's okay for you to protest, oh, now we're going to box you in and arrest everybody on the corner of 2nd and Main.
Or herd you a certain place.
Right.
That's probably what you're talking about. Well, I know when the Portland Occupy Portland was happening, folks here at Indie Media or at Portland Community Media were trying to get folks to bring footage in and do something with. And but it doesn't happen. Most of the time, people just do it for themselves.
Right.
And it may end up on a Facebook page that you wouldn't see or I wouldn't see because we're not friends with them or whatever. And so it's difficult to get it out to everybody.
People need to be self-driven and motivated. I've had to do that over these years because someone's not necessarily going to do it for you. So I came here in 2005, and it was a period of just dramatic change in my own life with trying to it was just a life transition to where I became someone that was really interested in wanting to know what's going on with world events, especially after the 9/11 era and the rise in police and security and surveillance.
Police, yeah.
Right, and the escalation of wars throughout the world. So for me, it's actually been more of a spiritual thing, and questioning what I call the evil behind government, whether we're aware of all that's there or not. It feels like a mission to expose those entities or individuals, dominators in our world that are actually trying to lead our country astray. And a lot of these things, a lot of these wars taking place, they're not benefiting the country.
They're certainly not benefiting the people.
Right.
That's right.
And you were talking about the suicides, in the military before the show. And, I think some people may have become a little numb to that, but we shouldn't. That's a big deal when your troops are committing suicides at a record number, regardless of what someone's opinion about the war is. So these are all things and I remember immediately after the Iraq situation when they went in, there were certain people that were repeating rhetoric that if you don't like it here, leave the country. There's less people that say that today. Right.
That started in the Vietnam era.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Native Americans might have a different perspective on that. treat it right or leave it, maybe,
Right.
or something like that. It might be a good way to go. But you know, what you were talking about, you know, the spiritual and the government and all that. But there is specific things that probably happen to make you want to get on TV and specific events in the world or whatever. Is there anything that specific that got you really galvanized enough to do something? Do something in the media, I should say.
My father's from Afghanistan. My mom was born here in Oregon. So after 9/11, that was a personal insult to start hearing something that I believe was a lie, that the people in Afghanistan had something to do with 9/11. Anyone that researches the topic and looks at, say, the Taliban, for example, and this period from the Mujahideen to the Taliban, I look at the Taliban as a group of hostage takers. A
bunch of thugs.
Yeah, a bunch of thugs that were very well funded by Western money, though, and a lot of it was coming through Pakistani channels. So, you know, let's just say, for example, that a mafia group took control over Portland, and they had control over the police, and they had control over the mayor, and they had Charlie Hales like that. Imagine the whole world demonizing every Portlander, calling every Portlander a terrorist because City Hall was taken over by powerful forces. And imagine if the world just said nothing while Portlanders were raped, murdered, and shot in the street, while there were air raids overhead, dropping bombs, people disappearing, and black ops sites all throughout the state of Oregon, no one saying anything. We would feel like we're under attack. And everybody watching that, anyone with a heart, would be horrified. So after 9/11, all these innocent people, because of the proximity, because of the country they were living in, and there's still people being tortured to this day that are being forced to leave their home. They don't have a government that actually represents them. You know, we're not going to get long-winded into all the special interests there, but you actually have China, Russia, and other governments very much interested in creating the Afghanistan that they want. And Afghanistan is a country with lots of resources. They have lithium that goes in our cell phones.
A lot of minerals. Yeah.
Right. And the American government, the Unicol, through Karzai, were trying to get a pipeline going in Afghanistan.
That's what Zahir Wahab was saying from the very beginning.
That's right. And I believe he's over there now in Afghanistan at a school.
He goes over and works at the Department of Education 6 or 8 months of the year.
So one of the things that I talk about, because 9/11 is not a main issue anymore on my show, but it's kind of where things started from. I talk a lot about how some of these larger nations actually work together in some of these conflict regions. But the media frames things as United States versus China. You know, China and Russia versus the United States. But if you look at the Middle East, they all seem to be sharing a piece of that pie. So now you have an oil pipeline.
Keeping the water foamed up.
That's right.
So nobody can really see what's going on, you say.
And they all have these war on terrors within their own countries, which is interesting. So, you know, today we say, oh, Putin says this to Obama. Well, Obama says this to Putin, you know, and they're butting heads. But Putin has his own war on extremists, you know, and Chechnya, and there's a whole history there. Not to mention, Russia committed quite a few war crimes on the ground when they were in Afghanistan between 79 and 89. They weren't just going over there with drones. They were actually going down on the ground and doing stuff. But they were being funded by the United States, the Mujahideen that is. And there's a major difference between them and the Taliban, because there are people that were basically fighting for their country and fighting for freedom in the way that Americans would fight for freedom if we were invaded by China or Russia. Long story short, that's where things started for me. And then I got more interested in, as I started having different guests on the show, I'm like, well, now that we've got this technology, you know, I want to go out and get some of those guests that I've heard on other shows that we'll never see on the mainstream media, you know, and developing friendships with some of those individuals, but also respect. And that meant a lot to me to get respect from people that I respect, because it takes a lot to go out on the world stage, be it Access TV or on the internet, and put out a controversial view or idea before its time has come and get laughed at, ridiculed.
Threatened.
Right. Throughout my time doing my show, I've been evicted at a couple of homes and had some issues with work. Sometimes it had to deal with just concern over what people would think about them being associated with me, simply because of the TV show going out. You know, you see this guy, he's on Access TV talking about this stuff, but he's also serving your food. Kind of an awkward situation. So while some people in the early days would say, hey, Alex, how much do you get paid for doing that? You're really good at it. It's never been done for money, although in times, rough times, donations have come in from outside Oregon, from people that support what we call independent media. or alternative media, because there's a strong desire for it, even today. And there is an overabundance, you can even say, on YouTube. So in this day and age of 2015, it can be problematic trying to reach certain people because there's just so much. And obviously for those that watch my content, some of it is conspiracy leaning. There's also a lot of completely bogus disinformation that's completely fake on the internet. So now we're in a climate where unless someone has the background information to know what's real and what's not real, there's just so much now screaming at different people. So it's a climate of a real anarchy of information.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Sure, I could probably go on there and maybe ferret out what's true from what isn't sometimes.
Right.
And I know that you can because you're well versed in this. But say a person says, oh, I'm sick of this corporate media. I need to get in there. They go on the internet. How are they going to be able to shuffle through it and come up with anything that there's any semblance of reality to it? Like you say, conspiracy theorists, but there's also conspiracy reality.
Right.
And where do you
and
fall
there's a
between
light
that?
and a dark side to the conspiracy truth. It should actually catapult someone to go, well, what is, at least these are the messages that I bring to outside the box. What does it mean to be a human being? Why are we even thrust in these circumstances? Okay, so we start thinking about the robot takeover. We start looking at this one world government structure, but what's really behind it? Now, I'm not a religious person, but, whether we look at, the concept of the Eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, or people mention movies like They Live and other allegories that are in Hollywood, or books by Philip K. Dick, Blade Runner. There's something to the human imagination and consciousness that is able to perceive these things, and has, long before these actual events start transpiring.
You're bringing it out.
And the spiritual path is to not be so focused on whether we're going to, well, there's the New Age path, which I'm also not, and I'm not demonizing everything, but there's this belief system of leading up to 2012, some people were expecting the end, but there was also a lot of people that were expecting a collective shift in consciousness, literally an alien rapture. Ascension. And I think that those expectations can be detrimental and can take us out of the moment. So we're here now and are probably going to be in these physical bodies for the rest of our lives. And we may live longer than, some of these hardcore theories that say we're all going to be dead in 10 years, which do nothing but lead people nowhere. And there are certain people out there that have a damn good business model telling people they're going to die soon. And unless they buy their products and buy their iodine and buy whatever, then they're not going to make it. And so it's important that people realize there's a big business model. And this is really about the spiritual essence of what it means to be human in a world where relationships are even changing between men and women. And in a city like
men and men and women and women.
In every which way.
Well, you mentioned one world government. Now, one of the oldest running conspiracy theories I've been hearing in my life has been that the UN. Now, is that what you consider one world government? I never really looked at it. I never thought it was. I thought that was just kind of like a red herring. That one world government is not the United Nations. 'Cause it's toothless.
They're running certain things through the United Nations, but I think that we're going to have something come about. I think they're planning for a third world war between the major superstates, and I've been mentioning this off and on since 2007. And there's a lot of reasons why I believe that. Part of it's that China, for example, has been given quite a bit from the United States on a technological level. And they're also being given the green light to buy record amounts of land. And by the way, they're the new investors in the South waterfront area. And so
I'm not surprised.
It seems like, this is building up, but we know that there's a history of bankers making quite a bit of money funding both sides of World War conflicts, looking at World War I and World War II. And I don't see World War III as
Senior.
Right. There's a lot of history with those families, and a lot of those families have really deep connections with families in the East, like the Li family, which is a very powerful family in China. So I think that we're heading towards this potential reality where we could even see the UN destroyed and replaced with something else. Before there was a UN, there was a League of Nations. But their intentions for these groups, even though there may be some things on paper that sound great, the United Nations is all about, Agenda 21, for example, and they use the word sustainable. Well, a lot of people want to be self-sufficient and they want to be green friendly, but some of the things that they're doing aren't very sustainable. On the topic of one of them, they're talking about climate change. And they've said this whole time, there's no science to suggest that the sun has anything to do with climate change. Well, now they're saying that they should use geoengineering to stop the effects of climate change. But if it's just being caused by man, it's being caused by emissions, what does that have to do with blocking out the sun? The United Nations has played a really big role in promoting one way of looking at climate change, and they're so influential in networks and so NPR and Amy Goodman and other associated shows and media outlets may put out some good information, but there's a lot of people that aren't very happy with hearing that globalist, that international perspective that doesn't seem to have all the perspectives or all the facts, especially when they're not talking about the sun's real. And I think the sun plays a huge role in our life.
Well, there's no doubt, that industrialized planet isn't probably the only thing that's causing it. I mean, we've had high CO2s in the way ancient past, and people weren't here to cause it.
Right.
So, but that doesn't mean that we aren't adding to it.
Right.
So if there's multiple causes, then if you can alleviate any one of them causes, it's going to hopefully help. We've already gone over 350 parts per million to 400 now.
Yeah.
Which 350 parts per million, according to some scientists anyway, is the threshold of the carbon dioxide going rampant.
Well, all I know is there's other technologies out there that we could be utilizing, so we don't have to be dependent on oil. Well, and there's that documentary, Who Killed the Electric Car? And there are electric cars that are out there now.
Tesla.
Right.
Oh, yeah. She got $100 grand.
Right. So I would rather be on a different system entirely, but it seems like they want us to stay on this particular system. There is a documentary called Thrive that gets more in-depth into this.
You know, you and not that I don't do it myself. I use the word they a lot, but you said they. Who specifically, can you nail that down? You say they want us to they want to create world war between nations, and you've mentioned that a few different times. Do you have any clear idea who they would be?
They, it's a general term for the globalists or New World Order, but I rather keep it a little bit more, I'll call it agnostic, because it's clear that there are plans to do certain things, but I'm not going to go and say, but I know that it's just this 100 people, or I know that it's just a Bilderberg group. Instead, it's clear that they are building the system, and over a course of many decades, they've used the same terminologies. They, different groups, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Club of Rome, and many, many other groups. What isn't clear is how they're so well organized. So we're not going to get on this show into other areas or things of a David Icke sort. But in no way, shape, or form do I think that we're alone in the universe, for example. I think this is somewhat, whatever the whole earth is somewhat of a petri dish. Every day we're learning about what man is doing to rats to alter the thoughts of rats, to erase memories, to implant memories, to control them. Okay, yet at the same time, people say, we really have a lot to learn. We're really behind in science. We're so behind that we're already at the level of toying with the memories of rats. No, I don't think we're alone in the universe. And I don't think our governments are doing this by themselves. And in this day and age of 2015, I know in my lifetime, I'm going to see a lot of anti-human things unleashed upon the species. So I think that we've passed the point now where some of those things are so fringe they can't be taken seriously because of the seriousness of the situation that we're facing. But I don't force that down people's throat, but I definitely think this is something far larger than what maybe we are able to perceive. Whatever's happening to the whole globe, the whole human species.
Well, people got to come to those realizations step at a
Right.
time.
They can't.
You didn't come to them all at once either.
Right. So I definitely can't, and I wouldn't want to force someone to believe a certain way. But what I also can't do is censor what I really think and censor what I really feel. So I think it's better to say, there's some things that we don't know, but we can see that there's certain patterns where certain language has been repeated throughout time. And there's a tight-knit organizational structure to a lot of these groups and how they're interlocked and how they relate to each other. And I think that is more of something that we should keep looking at. And I definitely don't think that it's just the Bilderberg group or some of these other groups, as some other people are alleging. And in this point, I think that the superstate nations, China, Russia, the United States, and of course France and the UK, are working far more together than what people are seeing on CNN or Russia Today or CCTV or the BBC.
You should probably talk about when your show is on.
Okay.
And,
yeah, we're down to 2 minutes here. You bet.
And
Okay.
we just about have to.
So let's
cut
go to
off
that.
Anyway.
Let's go to that graphic page if we have it up. We've got a couple show times. Pages for show times. You don't have the graphic, right? Okay, that's okay. We can't anymore. That's okay. But my show, I don't have that good of a photographic memory, but I'm going to be announcing the show times on my show fairly soon. I can say this: after the 5th of April, Outside the Box TV is right now going into its 2nd year since its return, but overall its 10th year, with a couple years off. Thursdays, Channel 11, 7 p.m. after the 5th of April, which is the show or the time that the show started on. Okay. Right. So right now it's on Channel 11 at 5:30 on Sunday, plus a rerun on Saturday and Tuesday.
Okay, and we want to thank our crew for making this show possible. Without them, we just couldn't even do it. So, we appreciate Alex Ansary showing up and helping us. Giving a great show today.
Well, thank you.
Okay, and also want to thank you for bringing that clip.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, but it looked like a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was fun.
Editing can be both. I mean, computers are a time sink, but computer editing is a double time sink.
We have a lot of good equipment here at PCM. I'm grateful for that.
Right. We should give PCM some kudos, too, as well. They provide the facilities, and it comes from the subscriptions. The couple of bucks that come out of your that you pay every month for your cable bill goes to making these facilities, and they're here for you as well. If you want to come and take some classes and learn, it's open for everybody. You know, it's not quite as open as the internet, but it's open. All right. Well, I also want to thank the crew, and I want to thank Alex and the two gals, Kayleen and Joy from Solve. Follow up on that. SOLVE Oregon.org. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next month.